Before we begin with the first item on the agenda, also have to notify for the record items number 2, A24 on the consent agenda, and item number 12 on the regular docket have been pulled. So those will not be under consideration in today's meeting. First item on the agenda is number 1 as stated, which is approval of the minutes from our last school land board meeting in February 16. Assuming my colleagues have had a chance to review and assuming no objections, I can entertain a motion and a second in order to approve these minutes.
So moved.
Oh, Mr. Wuchiaga was not in attendance during the last board meeting, so I will go ahead and second the minutes. The motion is made, seconded, and carried unanimously to move forward. Next item on the agenda is number 2 as stated. As was mentioned, item number 2, A24, was pulled from the consent agenda. Assuming no questions, comments, or objections, I can go ahead and approve those.
So moved.
I second.
Motion is made, seconded, and carried unanimously to approve the consent agenda as posted. Next item on the agenda is number 3, as stated, consideration applications for commercial easements on coastal public lands.
Good morning. David Wells with Asset Management, and docket item 3A is LC 2005-0050, Bay 5 Dock Association, LLC, Laguna Madre, Cameron County. This item is a renewal to a commercial easement on coastal public lands comprised of approximately 7,147 square feet. This easement contains a pier, riprap, and open encumbered area. Staff calculated rent based on a land value determination. This resulted in a rental increase of approximately 400% for the lessee. In an effort to be consistent with addressing similar situations previously, staff is recommending a rental increase of 20% from the previous contract. This rent calculation results in an annual consideration of $2,707.40 per year, with a total consideration of $27,074 for the 10-year term. Staff recommends approval of docket item 3A as posted.
Any questions from the board?
So motion.
Second.
Motion is made, seconded, and carried unanimously to approve item number 3. Next item on the agenda is number 4, as stated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, for the record, I'm Rusty Martin, Chief Investment Officer. Approval of this agenda item would constitute your approval of the filing of a proposed new rule as required by Section 51.413B of the Texas Natural Resources Code that would establish the procedure to be used by the board to determine the amount and date of any periodic release of money from the Real Estate Special Fund account, which we call the RESFA, to either the Available School Fund or the State Board of Education for investment in the Permanent School Fund. In the last legislative session, HB 1551 amended Section 51.413 to provide that the board adopt rules to establish the procedure to be used to determine the amount and date of any periodic release of money from the RESFA to either the ASF or the SBOE for investment in the PSF. The proposed rule that's been drafted in response to HB 1551 is attached to the memo. Basically it's in 3 sections. I'm not going to go into each section in detail unless you'd like me to. I'm perfectly happy to do that, but just briefly, Section 1 details how the calculation to determine the amounts recommended for release are performed. Section 2 details that the CIO, myself, will provide a recommendation to the board no later than September 1st of each even-numbered year, and then the board will adopt a resolution that details the actual amounts to be released and whether it's either to the ASF or the SBOE. So we'll be making a calculation, making a recommendation to the board, and then the board has the flexibility to adopt either that recommended amount or any amount that it wants to adopt. The third section of the rule just states that not later than September 1st of each numbered year, we will submit a report to the legislature, the comptroller, SBOE, and the LBB that details the dates and the amounts that will be associated with the releases. Following your approval today, this rule will be published in the Texas Register, and there will be a 30-day comment period open to the public. If no public comments are received, then notice of the rule's adoption will be published again in the Texas Register following the end of the comment period. If public comments are received, the comments will be presented to the board for consideration of further action at a board meeting following the end of the comment period. I'm recommending approval of the proposed rule. It's been drafted in accordance with the provisions of Section 51.413B of the Texas Natural Resources Code. Recommending that you file it with the Texas Register for public comment, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I would note that what this rule does is it just codifies what we've already been doing in the past anyway. We haven't changed the procedure at all. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made, seconded, and carried unanimously to approve item number 4. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you.
Items number 5 through 13 will be in executive session, with the exception of items number 12, as stated before. The School Land Board will enter executive session pursuant to Chapter 551, Subchapter D, Section 551, Tech 071 of the Texas Government Code, for discussion and consideration regarding pending or contemplated litigation and/or settlement offers, or to seek or receive attorney advice or counsel related to items 5 through 13, with the exception of 12 on the docket and subsection 551, Tech 072, for the discussion and consideration concerning the purchase, sale, exchange, lease, or value of real property related to items 5 through 13, with the exception of 12 on the docket. Following executive session, we will reconvene in open session to complete the docket. The open session of the March 29, 2016 School Land Board meeting will now resume with item number 5.
Good morning. Amber Long, Asset Management. Staff recommends approval of the disposition of PSF land per the terms discussed in closed session. Any questions?
Move to approve.
A second.
Motion is made, seconded, and carried unanimously to approve item number 5.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is number 6, as stated.
Good morning, Ken Mills, Office of General Counsel. Staff recommends that with regard to these 4 vacancy matters, which are SF 16608, 16609, 16610, and 16611 located in Wise County, that the board set terms and conditions for the lease and sale of the mineral interests as described in the packet memos on the terms and conditions as recommended and discussed in executive session.
So motion.
Second.
Motion is made, seconded, and carried unanimously to approve item number 6 on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is number 7.
Ken Mills, Office of General Counsel. Staff recommends settlement of this audit matter with Killam Land and Cattle on the terms as discussed in executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made, seconded, and carried unanimously to approve item number 7.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is number 8.
For the record, Ken Mills, Office of General Counsel. Staff recommends settlement of this audit matter with Hall Houston on the terms as set forth in executive session.
So motion.
Second.
Motion is made, seconded, carried unanimously to approve item number 8. Next item on the agenda is number 9, as stated.
Thank you. Ken Mills, Office of General Counsel, and staff recommends settlement as proposed in the discussion in executive session with EOG Resources.
So motion.
Second.
Motion is made, seconded, and carried unanimously to approve item number 9.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is number 10.
Russell May with Asset Management. Item number 10 was just an informative briefing. I don't believe there's a need for any approval, is my understanding.
Thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is number 11. I was too anxious to close the deal there, Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, for the record, Rusty Martin, Chief Investment Officer. With regard to agenda item number 11, I move approval in accordance with the terms and conditions that were described to the board in executive session. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made, seconded, and carried unanimously to approve item number 11. Item number 12 has been pulled from the agenda. So the final item on the agenda for today's meeting is number 13 as stated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, approval of this item would constitute your approval of co-investment by Texas General Land Office on behalf of the Permanent School Fund alongside First Reserve Fund 13 LP through a newly created co-investment structure called Capital Co-Investments 10 LLC. The IEC is recommending that TexGlow co-invest up to $75 million alongside First Reserve 13 through Capital Co-Investments 10. For background purposes, the board currently has a $100 million capital investment to First Reserve Fund 13, also $225 million in capital commitments to First Reserve Infrastructure's Funds 1 and 2, which are all closed-end commingled funds sponsored by the First Reserve Corporation that focus on providing investment capital to the upstream, midstream, and services sectors of the global independent energy industry. In addition, the board has a $100 million U.S. upstream co-investment alongside Fund 13. First Reserve has recently identified a very attractive investment opportunity in the midstream space that requires capital in addition to the amount committed by Fund 13. Therefore, it has solicited a select group of interested potential co-investment partners from within the pool of Fund 13 limited partners to participate in the transaction. Fund 13 representatives initially presented details of the proposed co-investment to staff in mid-February. Comprehensive due diligence materials were subsequently made available to staff and the Townsend Group for review and analysis. Following a detailed due diligence call with First Reserve on March the 1st and a follow-up call on March the 7th, First Reserve representatives made a detailed presentation to the IEC and to the Townsend Group on March the 10th. In conjunction with this review and analysis, staff and the IEC have determined that the proposed co-investment fits within the framework of the TexGlow PSF Real Assets Investment Policy Statement, and it is in the best interest of the Permanent School Fund. Therefore, the IEC is recommending that the School Land Board approve a co-investment of up to $75 million in the proposed transaction alongside First Reserve Fund 13 through Capital Co-Investments 10 LLC. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
So moved. So moved.
Oh, seconded, and the motion is made, seconded, and it carries to approve item number 13.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rusty. There being no further business before the School Land Board, the meeting is hereby adjourned.